Hi, everybody. This is Michael Lelah. I'm the Chief Science Officer with NutriScience. Welcome. Today is our third webinar, and today we're going to talk about sleep and some of the couple of the ingredients that NutriScience has to help with sleep. This is kind of an area that everyone is interested in. And so we'll dig right into it, but we'll start off talking about emotional well-being. So today, as a result of, certainly as a result of COVID and the challenges that everybody's facing in their personal lives with COVID in some fashion, is this area of emotional well-being. So let's start with what emotional well-being is. It's the control of your thoughts and feelings, your emotions, and your behaviors, and the idea being to focus on a positive mental health. And emotional well-being, we're all being challenged in the area of emotional well-being today, and we're looking for ways, be they physical or psychological or through nutrition, to help with emotional well-being. So emotional well-being is affected by stress, anxiety, and focus, and of course sleep. And so we're going to talk about sleep today. So just a few things about understanding sleep to kind of set the pace here for where we're going to focus on. Obviously, sleep, there's a lot of research that has been done over hundreds and hundreds of years on circadian rhythms, the sleep-wake cycle, and how hormones such as melatonin can help establish those circadian rhythms. The areas in the past where a lot of focus has been in terms of clinical studies has been on sleep quantity, the number of hours of sleep that I get every day, and sleep quality. You know, how did I have a good night's sleep as measured by some parameters? And we'll come back to these two things later on. The medical community really focuses on sleep disorders in terms of these 5 classical sleep disorders. I'm not going to go into them, but just to remind people that this is where the medical community focuses attention, and the drugs that are designed to help with sleep are typically in that area. However, there is newer research on non-restorative sleep, and we'll talk about that very, very specifically later. And there's new research now on the metabolic effects due to sleep or lack of sleep, leading to insulin resistance, leading to metabolic syndrome, effects on cardiovascular health. Leptins are becoming an area of interest on the metabolic front, which is basically leptins are satiety hormones, and they seem to be affected by sleep. And of course, nutrition and sleep work in 2 directions. Sleep helps with nutrition, nutrition helps with sleep, and so these areas here where this new research is the areas that we're going to focus more attention on. So we're going to talk very specifically about 2 products that NutriScience has. Suntheanine is an L-theanine. It's an amino acid. It's a component of tea, which imparts that sense of relaxation. So when you're sipping a cup of tea, you're getting 2 different ingredients that you consume. One of them is L-theanine, which imparts the sense of relaxation. The other, of course, is caffeine, which imparts energy and activity. And tea is a very interesting beverage in the sense that it balances these 2 different components. So suntheanine is our L-theanine, it's made by a patented process which mimics the formation of L-theanine in tea itself. So in tea, L-theanine is made by an enzymatic process, and it's the same enzymatic process which is patented and which is used to make suntheanine. So the interesting thing about suntheanine is that it is fast acting. You can actually feel that relaxation, that focus in about 30 to 60 minutes. Very fast acting. And there are specific clinical studies with suntheanine and its effects on sleep. Before we get into those studies, though, let's just talk about some of the mechanisms about how theanine itself affects the brain. So we know that when we take a nutrient into the stomach and then it crosses the lumen and goes into the bloodstream, and the blood then takes the nutrient to various organs, including the brain. In the brain, there is a blood-brain barrier. And it may be interesting for you to know that GABA, which is a sleep ingredient, a very well-touted, well-used sleep ingredient, actually has a very difficult time crossing the blood-brain barrier. And so GABA itself, if it's taken as a nutrient, is not very effective for effects on sleep, while L-theanine, the natural form of the amino acid theanine, actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. And then there are mechanisms, biochemical mechanisms, known biochemical mechanisms for the conversion of theanine to GABA. And thus you can get an increase in GABA in the brain. And GABA itself is a sleep-inducing amino acid derivative that is involved in a lot of processes in the brain. Now, in addition to this chemical action of suntheanine or theanine and GABA, there's also physical action where the brain emits waves, and these waves have been typically divided up into alpha, gamma, beta, and delta waves. And the alpha waves, increasing alpha waves, imparts that relaxation and sleep. Decreasing the beta waves, for example, also helps impart that same effect. And there are studies that have been done with suntheanine showing that when you've taken even a small amount of suntheanine, 50 milligrams, you get a significant increase, in this case, in alpha wave generation. And so not only is there a chemical effect, there's also this energetic or physical effect with suntheanine. So let's take those mechanisms now and look at some of the clinical studies that have been done on sleep. There are at least 4 major studies, and there are lots of other studies that have been done specifically on suntheanine and its effect on sleep. There have been studies with sleep quality in men, some studies on mechanism, which we've talked a little about, and sleep quality in women. Some studies on children as well, and also some studies on what happens during the daytime. I'm going to focus on a couple of these studies. All of these studies have shown the effect of suntheanine on sleep. They've all been published. I'm going to focus on a couple studies that to illustrate the action of suntheanine. And the first one is this study in men using suntheanine. And on an ongoing basis, what you'll see, what has been seen is both improvements in the quality of sleep as measured by a number of different parameters, such as in the middle upper here, where we're looking at the dream quality, where we have reduction in a number of nightmares, some aspects of awakening and how refreshed we are at awakening, which is essentially non-restorative sleep. And you can see that in all these different parameters that have been measured, there is an improvement versus the placebo. Now, all these studies have been randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. So the statistical significance means that Suntheanine has a clinical effect on sleep. The other study I wanted to just highlight for you is a study in children. So this was a study with boys in aged 8 to 13. They were given 400 milligrams of Suntheanine over a 6-week period, where in the first few days, there was an instrument called an actinograph, and that measures, that's like a, in today's world, it's a watch that you would wear at night, and it would look at your sleep patterns and measure, take information on sleep, whether you're asleep, whether you're awake, whether you're in REM sleep, whether you're moving around. And then over the period, also to look at questionnaires for these boys, again, in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study. And you can see that, again, significantly and dramatically, a number of different parameters that were measured showed either improvements in sleep or decreases in sleep disturbances. For example, in the first graph, you'll see a decrease in the number of discrete bouts of nocturnal activity, disturbances in sleep, while in the next slide, you'll see an increase in sleep efficiency, and then the third slide, a decrease in wake after sleep onset. So that's got to do with after you get to sleep, how many times and how long do you wake up for? So again, here's an example of a study in boys, and I didn't mention this at the onset, but these are boys that have been diagnosed with ADHD. And children that have ADHD not only have problems of concentration and focus during the daytime, but also have problems sleeping at night. And this study showed that Suntheanine improves their sleep performance over this period of time. So with that, I'm going to switch topics to another ingredient that we have for sleep. It's an ashwagandha. And this ashwagandha is called Shoden. And Shoden is an extract of the roots and leaves of the ashwagandha plant to a industry-leading 35% withanolide glycoside concentration at 35% withanolide glycosides. Now, the withanolides are the overall class of ingredients that are very unique to ashwagandha. There are only a couple other plants that have withanolides in them, unlike, for example, the polyphenols, which are present across the board in essentially most, if not all, plants. The withanolides are very unique. They are very specific to ashwagandha, and they have been shown to be the bioactive ingredients in ashwagandha. There are two different groups of withanolides. One are the withanolide glycosides, which are withanolides that have a sugar moiety attached to them. And when the withanolide glycosides are consumed, they are cleaved in the gut, and you get the withanolides. And also, in addition to that, Shoden has a small amount of withanolide A-glycones. So the A-glycones are without the sugar component, and both the withanolide glycosides and the A-glycones are bioactive. The withanolide glycosides have been studied specifically for their bioactivity. So in order to get this really high level of withanolide glycosides, Shoden uses a two-step extraction process. Only water and ethanol are used in the extraction process, but that's in order to get that high level withanolide glycosides. And Shoden now has some newer research specifically on non-restorative sleep. So I'm going to focus on non-restorative sleep here. So first of all, what is non-restorative sleep? Well, it's it's when you wake up and you're still tired and you're lethargic, you're not energetic, you're not in a great mood, and you're not prepared for the day. That's when you have non-restorative sleep. And of course, the opposite is when you wake up feeling refreshed and restored and ready for the day, and that is restorative sleep. And surprisingly, non-restorative sleep has been estimated to affect about 700 million people worldwide. And it's a phenomenon that is becoming more and more obvious and more relevant. It's sort of a condition that we're seeing more and more with people. Tirana Lodog, who is a clinician who does work in the natural products area, I listened to a talk by her maybe June last year, where she was talking about sleep and talking about it from a clinician's point of view. And she made the point about non-restorative sleep. She said, it's not just about sleep, it's about non-restorative sleep. So Shoden has the only non-restorative sleep study completed. Again, it's a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study. 120 milligrams of Shoden ashwagandha were given to 150 participants in both the placebo, that's combined together in the placebo and the active arms of the study for a period of 6 weeks. And again, the same methodologies as we talked about earlier were used in the Shoden clinical study. Actinography was used to actually measure time of sleep and events. And then, of course, questionnaires were asked at various points in order to gather data on how the participants felt about their sleep. So the study has been published on non-restorative sleep. And what we did was to take the published study and then use a third-party statistics group to do some additional analysis. And what I'm going to show you here is a combination of both the published data and the post-publication data as well. And what we see is, as you can see in this graph here, a significant increase with Shoden on restored sleep as measured in comparison to the placebo. So with the placebo, you can see there was a small increase, and then with Shoden, there was a significant increase. And this significance was determined both between the groups and within the groups. In other words, between the groups means comparing Shoden and the placebo, and within the group means from the beginning of the study to the end of the study after taking Shoden ashwagandha, there were improvements in non-restorative sleep. We also did some in-depth analysis of the non-restorative sleep questionnaire, looking at the individual questions themselves. And what we found was that there was also significance in the results for a number of the different parameters. such as energy, where I feel energetic and not sleepy. With Shoden, there was a statistical and clinical improvement at 6 weeks. The same was true for mood, where I wake up feeling in a good mood, not grouchy or irritated. Again, a significant improvement in mood. And then there were some questions that were related to being rested and refreshed. This whole set of questions was part of the questionnaire for non-restorative sleep, but we went in and analyzed individual questions. And again, for refreshed and restored sleep, we see a significant improvement, and mental alertness, which has got to do with focus and cognitive support. Again, a significant increase or improvement in performance with Shoden. Many other parameters were also measured in terms of sleep quantity. For example, there was an increase of 36 minutes on average, clinically significant, compared with the placebo, and with a total bedtime, actual decrease in total bedtime. So that tells you that not only was the sleep time increased, but the bedtime, which is the time that they're actually in bed, which includes both time that they were asleep and time that they were that participants were awake but in bed, had decreased. So better efficiency and utilization of sleep time. In addition, other sleep parameters were measured as well. The onset of sleep latency, which has to do with when the lights go out, how long does it take me to fall asleep? There was a decrease in that time, a statistically significant decrease in the time of latency. Sleep efficiencies, again, which were measured, as I talked about, as being related to the time of sleep versus the time actually in bed. Improvements with Shoden, again, statistically significant. And the wake time after sleep onset, another typical sleep quality parameter which was measured, showing that after you start to sleep, you're going to have some time where you're awake during the night, and that decreased with Shoden versus placebo, as again statistically significant. In addition to the sleep measurements, we also did some quality of life assessments with various domains of quality of life, physical, psychological, environmental, and also discussions about social relationships. And there were significant improvements in quality of life parameters. Social relationships improved, but not significantly. So quite across the board, there were improvements in this non-restorative sleep study. And so we have to ask the question, well, how does this happen? Is there other explanations for the mechanisms? There is some research here. There's not a lot of research into the mechanisms of how ashwagandha works, but there are a few things that we know. First of all, ashwagandha is an adaptogen. An adaptogen is a plant ingredient or a plant component that will react in a positive way to stress and help reduce stress through hormonal action. Ashwagandha is a known adaptogen, and the specific compounds in ashwagandha that affect its behavior as an adaptogen are known to be the withanolide glycosides, and Shoden has a very high concentration of withanolide glycosides, so that's an explanation for the effects that we saw in the clinical study. From a biochemical mechanism, Shoden is also known to mimic the action of GABA in the brain. So the withanolide glycosides, which then cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain, are known to mimic how GABA behaves in the brain. And so again, this relates back to the mechanism for how Shoden is working in the brain with its effect on sleep. So in summary, Suntheanine and Shoden, these are the best non-hormonal sleep products on the market today. They've been studied. Suntheanine, a long-time ingredient, has been studied in a lot more clinical studies, both in men, women, and children. Shoden, a newer ingredient on the market, has this one top-level clinical study that has been completed, and we expect more to come down the road. The doses are pretty low for sleep. Shoden, 120 milligrams, gets you the study. The Suntheanine studies have been done between 200 and 400 milligrams, but also in addition, even as low as 50 milligrams of Suntheanine, you see the effect on alpha waves being present. And even at 50 milligrams, you can have an experiential feel of Suntheanine. So it's interesting that Suntheanine acts very quickly within that 30 to 45 minutes period of time, and then continues to act over the night. Ashwagandha tends to take a little longer. You need to take it for a period of time, for weeks, as it begins to establish a balance in the body, but is a very effective way to help with sleep. Shoden specifically has been shown very specifically to improve non-restorative sleep. Both of these products are water-soluble powders, which gives a formulation flexibility in terms of being able to be put into not only capsules and tablets, but beverages and foods as well. Both are clean label. There are no other added ingredients in either one of these products. They are 100% pure. The case of Suntheanine, pure L-theanine. In the case of Shoden, pure ashwagandha extract. There's no other ingredients that have been added. And both of them are non-GMO project verified. So with that, I hope you've had a chance to get a little better understanding of sleep. Sleep has become obviously a big problem in our society. We all feel it as individuals, and there are solutions. Some of these solutions are physical solutions, some of these are nutritional solutions, and some of these are ingredients such as Suntheanine and Shoden.